All right, everybody. Here we go. Tuesday Night Live. I'm waiting on all of you to jump on. Heather, hey, Paul. All right, now we're getting everybody on here. All right, you all ready? Here we go. So, we're going to go a little deep on some philosophy tonight. I think it's about time for all of us to be reminded who we are and what we do. All right, this is very important. And I've been, honestly, I've been spending a lot of time with this personally. And it's amazing the difference it makes when you step into your office, the energy that you create, the the space that you create when you walk into your chiropractic office as a chiropractor. And for me, what helps me is when I go back to the beginning of chiropractic, what we were meant to do and what we're not meant to do. And I want to share with you some of the notes, some of the things I've been reading, some of the way I look at practice. And I'm going to tell you that it has paid off in my practice huge. Started off the year a little bit slow. I felt myself a little bit distracted, so I came back to the source. I got my green books, and I went back to, wait a minute. Yeah, I understand that, we're husbands and we're fathers and we're grandfathers, and, I'm a coach and I'm all these different things. But first, in the office, when I step into the practice, I'm one thing. I'm a chiropractor. And I will tell you, today was probably my busiest day all year. And I know every bit of it comes from the energy that I created from going back to source. So we're going to get in the middle of this. And I want you guys to really follow me. Stay with me on this. All right. This is important, what we're going to talk about. I'm going to do some reading. I'm glad this is recorded so you guys can go back and watch it again. I'm going to go fairly slowly. I want you guys either to take notes or just sit, listen, and come back and take notes later. But tonight isn't about getting fired up. Tonight isn't, I'm not coming at you hard. I'm not going to try to rattle your cage. What I want you to do is I want you to stop and think. Really put yourself into place of who you are. So let's get in the middle of this. And I named this the path of least resistance. And I'm going to tell you where I got a lot of this information from. This is, if you will get the Palmer 1958 Palmer's Law of Life, and you go to page 27, chapter 3. It's called the Law of Nonconformity, and I'm going to read some of the things that I took from this. It really, and it was affected me. And what's fascinating is I just picked this book out of all of my green books. I just pulled it out and I opened it up, and this is what hit me. And it sets the tone for tonight. All right. The path of least resistance. You guys ready? Let's go. BJ Palmer said, most people are parasites living luxuriously on work produced by a handful of non-superior, non-conformist minds. I'm going to read it again. I want you to think about what I'm saying here. Most people, and this is not just in the chiropractic profession, this is in all professions. Most of the people are parasites, and they live luxuriously on work produced by a handful of superior, nonconformist minds. The majority of people, including a percentage of chiropractors, prefer to be conformists to what is acceptable by the great masses. There exists fear of being a nonconformist. I'm going to stop right there. When I read this, and I don't know if it hit you the same way it did me, this book is written in 1958. The majority of people, including a percentage of chiropractors, prefer to be conformist to what is acceptable to the great masses. There exists fear in being a nonconformist. And the first thing that jumped in my head was masks. Everybody was afraid not to wear them. People knew that they were stupid. People knew that they weren't stopping anything, but they were deathly afraid not to wear it because they did not want somebody judging them. The whole world did this. BJ talked about this with our own profession. Strong individuals are progressive and break the unproven theories. History was made by nonconformists regardless of the fields. I'm going to read a lot of these things twice because I really want you to listen and think about what BJ is saying. And really what I want you guys to do is think about our profession. that are listening to my message, listening to my voice, watching me right now, you are chiropractors. Now, there is a difference between someone with a chiropractic degree and a chiropractor. There's a huge difference. I've lived it for almost 30 years now. I have lived this, and I want you to hear me. Strong individuals are progressive and break from unproven theories. History was and is made by nonconformists regardless of fields. How many times have you heard this? There's no science in chiropractic. Chiropractic is unproven. Chiropractic is quackery. Blah, blah. You go to Wikipedia and they even just try to disprove it. But here we sit. Here we sit today. Now listen, I'm reading this and I reflected back years ago. Years ago, I used to really ask this question. I was just blown away by our profession. And I would listen to Sigafus, and I would listen to Reggie Gold, and I would listen to Gonstead, and I would read BJ, and I would read Dee, and I would listen to these people. And I used to ask the question, what was different? What made them different? What these giants, when I say their name, now we have a lot of young chiropractors. We have a lot of chiropractors watching this, or that will be watching throughout the world, and they've never heard the name James Sigafus. One of them will, because his son will be watching this. Carrie, I hope you're doing well. Reggie Gold, Leo Spears. If you all don't know who Leo Spears is, I want you to go on YouTube and put Leo Spears Hospital. He had the largest chiropractic hospital in the world out in Colorado. I want you to pull up Leo. What made these humans different? What made the chiropractors different? But I'm also going to ask you this question. What's different about the young first-year doctor down the street, Dr. Tyler in Springfield, Missouri? Perfect example. What made this kid different? He came out, opened his own practice, and within the first year, he's over 200 a week. Why? We got Dr. Kaylee out in Australia, a little bitty country town in Australia. 3 years in practice, over 400 a week. Why? We got doctors in Malaysia. We got doctors in Indonesia. We got doctors all over the world that are doing things they're not supposed to be doing, quote unquote, in the realm of chiropractic profession. It's unheard of. Why? What makes them different? What makes a young lady, Dr. Shannon, in Boulder, Colorado, all cash practice, where people say that you can't have big practices, all cash practice, 3 different rooms. What makes her difference? Why does she have so many people pouring through her door? Because she has the Mabel room, she has the BJ room, and she has the Dee room. What does that mean? There are those among us who live outside the mainstream of contemporary life. They are not eccentric, rebellious, maladjusted, or unsuccessful. Some hidden umbilical cord attach them to characteristic new paths in which the mind and its virtues play the larger role. They lead themselves with facts. They seek truth. They are tired of endless struggles of failure. If one departs too far from the norm, he is thought to be of questionable wisdom. It conforms too rigidly. One can't express new ideas courageously. It's one price you pay either way. What BJ is saying is you can live the norm. You can follow along with mainstream. You can just not stay on the path and not rattle the cages and just do what you're told. And you're going to be unsuccessful and you're going to struggle and be unhappy. Or you can step out and do something great. And then you're going to be judged. One way or the other, you're going to pay a price. I want you to think about what I just said, and I'm going to break this down. The doctors that I was talking about, the Sigafus, Reggie Gold, Leo Spears, Palmers, Gonsteads, gosh, there's just so many throughout history. Herby Reaver, who we're going to hear from in a minute. And then we've got the doctors today that are doing things that no one else is doing. There's a young lady walking distance from my office that saw 74 pregnant women in a day. Why? Listen to this. What separates all of the greats? Listen. There are those among us who live outside the mainstream of contemporary life. They are not eccentric, they're not rebellious, they're not maladjusted, or they're not unsuccessful. They have some hidden umbilical cord attached to them, characteristic new past which in mind and its virtues. The word virtues, I want you to put in your brain, play the larger role. They lead themselves with facts. Here's a fact. Patient comes in with a migraine. I adjust the atlas, the migraine goes away. 92 out of 100 times. That's a fact. They seek truth. They're not just going to take what the media says and what the medical doctor says and what my sister is a nurse and she said. They seek truth. They are tired of endless struggles and failure. These people that I'm asking you about, what separates them, they're tired of endless struggles and failure. If one departs too far from the norm, he or she is thought to be questionable wisdom. Don't get outside the normal. There's something wrong with you. It conforms too rigidly. If you conform, then one can't express new ideas courageously. You can't speak your mind. You get canceled. It's one of the prices you're going to pay either way. I want to share something with you. I've studied these people, a lot of them through the years, and I want you to think about something. When I say James Sigafus, some of you know who he was and some of you wouldn't. When he started out, he wore a white coat. He went to National. He wore a white lab coat. He had a stethoscope around his neck. The majority of things he did was he did colonics. Believe it or not, they did colonics. They just cleaned out bowels. He maybe saw 6 or 7 a day. And he went from 6 or 7 a day to 600 a day. How? If you don't mind, I want you to, and I know I don't like reading normally, but I think this is important. This is one of my all-time favorite books. Herbert Ross Reaver, A Man Worth Knowing. This is one of the hardest books to find. If you can find it, get it. I'm really working hard. Life West has the copyright, and I'm trying to get them to let me republish it. It's just like pulling teeth. But Herbert Ross Reaver, for those of you who don't know, he was one of the most jailed chiropractors, and he was jailed for the longest period of time. And I want to read something. This was powerful. I've read this so many times to myself, and I will tell you, I even read it again this morning before I went to the office. And the energy, the vibration, the attitude that I had when I stepped into the office this morning was so different than how I felt the whole first part of the year. Maybe this will do this for you. Listen to this. This was written by Herbert's son. The name of the chapter is called Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad. I would awaken at night and know my father was not in the house. His absence was his hollow presence. I had to get out of bed and sneak downstairs to his study where I could look at his books, touch his pipes, sit in his chair and wonder if he was awake in his jail cell thinking of me. Dad didn't belong in jail, but I was proud of him for going. On his 8 previous arrests, he had paid his $25 fine and returned his life of crime practicing chiropractic. On his 9th arrest, he decided to make a stand. He refused to pay his fine, and he went to jail. When my father was indoctrinated into Chiropractic Hall of Fame, he said, "I'm just an ordinary chiropractor who became caught up in the events of the times." I don't think anybody believed him. Ordinary men do not willingly go to jail. They pay their $25 fine and go back home. It was against the law to practice chiropractic in Ohio, illegal to help sick people unless you were an MD. Dad was one of those who chose to suffer the humiliation and harassment of the medical arrester rather than desert his patients. He could have moved his office across the river to Kentucky where he was licensed to practice. It was only a few miles and his patients would certainly have followed him. I don't think it ever entered his mind. The more successful chiropractors were arrested most often. Being the most arrested, most jailed chiropractor in history is an honor of sorts. Surprisingly, going to jail never hurt his practice. In fact, it was just the opposite. Each time he got out of jail, he was busier than ever. I remember a conversation around the dinner table. Dad was tired and overworked, and so was Mom, who worked as a receptionist. How can we cut the practice down, Dad asked. Well, we can stop taking new patients, Mom said. Dad thought for a moment and said, no, I don't want to do that. Should we raise our fees, Mom said. I guess we have to, Dad said. An increase from $3 to $4 was a pretty big in those days. And a few weeks later, we were eating dinner again, and Dad said, has raising the fees cut us down any? Mom shook her head and said, no, the practice is growing faster than ever. Should we raise them again? Dad chewed his food and thought about it. Ah, hell, let's go back down to $3. I could always count on Dad. Many people thought he was a complicated man, but not me. I had him figured out all the time. He was simple. Dad always did what was right. It's the only way he knew. But I often wondered where that kind of dedication came from. 12 arrests, and a lot of arrests. That last jail sentence was for 6 months. That's a harsh punishment for a man guilty of helping sick people. He looked older when he got out the last time. Jail sentences were enforced to the minute, and Dad was always released at midnight. Mom and I were there in the waiting room watching the clock. At midnight, he would hear a distant door open, keys rattled, and the murmur of voices. Then Dad would walk out smiling. It seemed to me he always looked better after each of those few sentences. At least to me he did. This is a little boy that walked down to his dad's office. His father was in prison for 6 months. He wouldn't pay a $25 fine. And what struck me, and I hope it struck you, is when he got out, his practice grew. This was at a time when chiropractic was illegal. They raised their fees from $3 to $4, which was a lot of money back then, and his practice kept growing. I'm going to ask you all to think about this. I want you all to think of this question that I thought of. Here's a man that was a convict, went to jail, went to prison for 6 months. He gets out, and with chiropractic, with a specific intentional chiropractic adjustment, his practice continued to grow. He raised his prices. His practice continued to grow. They came from everywhere to see Herby Reaver. He was a chiropractor. He was a simple man. He was like you. He was like me. He wasn't anybody different, but he had virtue and he had character, and he told the truth, and he stood by it. Man, when I read that, it gives me so much conviction. I will tell you, gang, what it does for me, it makes me embarrassed. I am embarrassed sometimes in the way I act. I'm embarrassed by the lack of conviction that I have for this profession. I literally would stand and sit at this man's feet and listen to him speak. I would apologize to him for not having a stronger backbone in the profession that he went to prison for 6 months. He stood his ground, and he left his family at home. He's got a little boy that needed his dad, but his little boy was proud of his father. I want my kids to be proud of me. I want my profession to be proud of me. So when I walk into my office, I have a different level of conviction. Every time I read that, and I've read that 20 damn times, and every time I read it, I get pissed off at what a sissy I am. Right? I mean, look, we live by a certain set of principles, and anything else is outside the norm of chiropractic. Look, I've done some things through the years. I've stepped out of the norm. I started a new chiropractic association. And when I did that, I was called Chiro Priest by the other chiropractors in this state. I actually, when I started the association, because what they were trying to do to us, they were trying to bring drugs in, they were trying to just completely water us down, and I started a new association with principles in mind, with philosophy in mind, with our history in mind. And I actually got a message one time, I should have took a copy of it, that said, if I'm walking across the street, I will get run over. They were coming to get me. Look, I was in a coaching group before Foundations for 17 years. And when I stepped out because I was telling the truth. There was a certain script you're supposed to say. There's a certain way you were supposed to act. There's a certain things you were supposed to say. You were supposed to be a certain way, right, to fit into this group. And I stepped out. Now listen, the majority of the people that I knew, the doctors in this group, they weren't doing it either. They were just lying about it. They wouldn't tell the truth. They would tell you what you were supposed to hear. Kind of like, our government today. I refused to do it. Somebody asked me a question, I told them the truth. And all of a sudden, I was ousted. People that I considered very close friends, I thought were brothers and sisters of mine, no longer speak to me. I was not one of them anymore. I started, at Focus 1 and 2, man, everybody came. When I got ousted, you're not allowed to come to Focus anymore. Don't go. No, don't. Anything Tim Young has to do, you stay away. Matter of fact, that group, if anyone in that group finds out that anyone in that comes to our group, they get kicked out of their group. Outside the norm. You know what's interesting is I'm sitting here in my office right now, and I'm looking up here. I got a picture of Dee Palmer. I got a picture of B.J. Palmer in front of me. So to my prized possessions. In the middle, I've got a picture that Hugo and Judy Gibson gave me. Someone took a picture of me adjusting Hugo at a seminar, and they had it painted. Man, my heart swells. And so I've got Dee Palmer, a nonconformist of epic proportions. I got B.J. Palmer. We all know. You know Hugo Gibson. I don't know if any of you know this, but some of you that went to school, he taught at Cleveland Chiropractic School. He was fired as an instructor, the best teacher they had. He was fired because he was just way too chiropractic. He told chiropractic stories that were anecdotal. Anecdotal chiropractic stories have no place in chiropractic. The philosophy has no place in chiropractic. They fired him. Nonconformist. I want you to look over my right shoulder here. This picture is kind of funny. I got to laughing when I started looking around my office when I thought about this. That I was made for loving you. That's a Kiss song. I want you to think about Kiss in the early days. Who did what they did? They put on makeup. They blew fire and spit blood. That wasn't rock and roll. That was a nonconformist and arguably one of the number one largest rock bands in the world. But really, look over my left shoulder. Look at this. This is Jesus Christ, a sculpture, and he's laying hands on the blind man. You think Jesus was probably the largest, number one nonconformist in the history of history, right? It's interesting. I never thought about it before why I have certain heroes. And it's because these people, these human beings, stepped out and did things that no one else was willing to do. And they did it within the profession. They did it within their own professions. They did it out in the world. They changed the world, some of them. But it starts with changing you in the office. I have one of our doctors in the group. He was telling me this, that he has a colleague in his town. And he asked him, he said, this guy is just, he's pain-based, just therapies and pain-based. And he asked him, he said, don't you see the miracles of chiropractic? After all these years of practice, don't you understand what it is we do as a chiropractor? And the doctor's response was, I don't look for them and I don't ask. So why am I going down this road? Why, gang, do we not conform to this thing that's going on in our profession? And it's been going on. Hell, BJ was writing about it in the 50s. What we're seeing today is nothing new. They've just upped the game. They're really infiltrating the schools. We don't have a BJ Palmer anymore. We've got doctors in other countries, there are schools and professional organizations teaching and promoting hands in the pocket chiropractic, which means we don't adjust them. We got the UK. There is you manipulate the mid-back 6 times, refer to the MD. There's a lot of them are pushing that you should get an MD referral every single visit, you have to get approved by a medical doctor to adjust. Over in Australia, so doctors had got taken down because they were adjusting children. So why don't we conform? Why? I had a patient come in this week. Her name's Gay, and she's been coming in for 25 plus years. She's like a grandmother to me. Um, I took care of her husband before he passed. She came in this week, and her son, he just passed today. She came in Monday. She came in yesterday, and she was crying and said, "My son's dying. I just found out he passed today." She came into the office to get an adjustment. I had a patient yesterday. She came in. I hadn't seen her in 11 years. She was a teenager when she came in the first time, and I hadn't seen her in 11 years. And she came in, and as I'm doing a consultation, she's telling me about her neck problems and her headaches and all the things. And I take X-rays, and when I walk in, I look at her and I said, "Sis, have you been in an accident since I've seen you?" And she's sitting on my consultation table, my exam table, and tears start coming down her face. She hangs her head. She said, "Well, I've been in an abusive relationship." She goes, "I've had 4 kids since I've seen you, and I'm going through a divorce, and all I want to say is it's been rough." And I'm looking at her neck, and I'm looking at the pain in her face. And then she said something to me that ripped my heart out. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "I came in here because I knew I could trust you." You've heard me talk about the little girl years ago that her and her sister and her mom and dad and her grandmothers were in a house when the tornado hit Oklahoma, and it ripped the roof off. It completely, I mean, literally ripped the roof off their house. They were in a closet all huddled together, and by the grace of God, they weren't pulled out. They were terrified. And after that, anytime it even thundered, the girls would have panic attacks. And their father said, "Cammie, listen, um, if girls, if you get scared, just in your mind, shut your eyes and go to a safe place." And Camber, and they were in my office when they were telling me this story. Camber was laying on my table, and I had my hand on her, and Dad was telling me this, and he said, Cammie looked at me and said, "I want to go to Dr. Young's office. That's my safe place." And at that moment, I started to cry. So she was 5 when that happened. She's 18 years old tomorrow. She came in last year, the same little girl. She walked through my door. Her mother walked in behind her, and Cammie was crying, and her mom was crying. And I thought, "What, Camber? What is happening?" I mean, I thought somebody in the family had passed. And she looked at me with these big puppy dog eyes and crying, and she said, "Oh, Dr. Young, I failed my driver's test." I, uh, I said, "Cammie, I am so sorry, and that breaks my heart, but don't you ever come in my office and scare me like that." But she wanted to come see me. She wanted to come see me, her safe place. I had a family whose mother, wife, grandmother, and 2 kids died in a car accident on a Friday. That Monday, they were all in my office. I had a family that we had a tornado years ago, and it hit a school, and the 3rd graders were down in the basement, and the water came down. It drowned all of them. One of them was a little boy that I've been taking care of, and his family come in that Monday to see me. I get a call to come to the hospital when there's a baby that's not supposed to make it through the night. I get a call from a husband whose wife is dying of cancer. Will you come to the hospital and give her one last adjustment? I talked to a patient today. I texted her. She texted me and checked in. Her mother, 27 years ago, knew she was dying, knew she only had a couple days to live, and asked to come get one more adjustment by Dr. Young. Your people come to you because you are not like everyone else. Gang, all of these things I shared with you, all of the things I shared with you will never leave me. Will never leave me. That lady that came in when her and her daughter walked through my office, this was 25 years ago. They walked into my office. She's one of my very first patients. And the mother walked in and she looked up and she smiled, and behind her was her daughter Piper, and Piper mouthed the words, "This is her last visit." And I knew right then I would never ever see this lady again. And she laid on my table and I had to give her the last adjustment, knowing the last time I was going to lay hands on her. I adjusted this woman with more love and intention, almost to the point to where I was going to defy God. You will not take her. This chiropractic adjustment will save her. That's how I adjusted her. And I told her daughter, that feeling will never leave me. This is why we do not conform. This is why we become chiropractors. Gang, we cannot allow ourselves to conform to the mainstream crap. We cannot be brainwashed like everybody else. But here's the thing. We talk about all this, but how do we lose our way? Now, we're going to get fired up. We're going to be Herby Reaver. We're going to go to jail. We're going to read our green books. We're going to adjust. We're going to be chiropractors. And then half the day goes by, and then a week goes by, and then the next thing you know, we fall right back in line with the same old BS routine. Why? The maintenance adjustment, the pain right here adjustment, the complainer, it sucks us into pain chasing. Check this, pulled rib. The medical doctor said this. My other chiropractor did that. I'm not getting better. Bills, family activities, weekends, new cars, houses. Suck our will to live. That patient comes in and say, "Doc, it hurts." So next thing you know, what hurts right here? Well, let me adjust that. Ooh, does that feel better? I'm not getting better. I'm not getting well. Why? Why can't you help me? Do I need to take Advil? No, you need to take these vitamins. You need to take these minerals, and you need to do core strengthening exercises. We need to lose 40 pounds. And then next thing you know, you are a chiropractor, and you're getting results because chiropractic gets results, and you're actually paying attention to your adjustment. And the next thing you know, you're building new homes, and you're buying cars, and you're traveling, and then you become too big for chiropractic. We listen to the aches and pains and conform to what patients want. This is how we lose our way. We conform to the brainwashing. We watch the news. We watch drug commercials. I know chiropractors. I don't know personally because they would never tell me they went and got their COVID vaccine. We conform to the economy. Oh my gosh, we got an economy. Cost of living. Practice is down. It must be the economy. The practice is down. It must be the weather. Practice is down. It's the fairs in town. The practice is down. Well, it's the joint. They're taking all of our patients. We break into fear, rejection, and failure. We take the path of least resistance. I'm going to ask you all of you, watching tonight, everybody that's going to be watching later, I'm going to ask you a question. Are you taking the path of least resistance? Are you only telling them what they want to hear instead of telling them the truth and then delivering on that truth? Had a patient, I did a report of findings today. He came in yesterday, the quirky little guy, and I like to never got him out of the consultation. He wanted to argue with me about x-rays, and that didn't go so well for him. Got the x-rays. He come in today, and the girls put a note on his card and said he just wants to talk about the x-rays, and he doesn't want an adjustment. Okay. So I go over the x-rays, and the problem was the chiropractor that he went before had told him that he adjusted him with activator and stretching. So stretching, he said he stretched me some, he did some soft tissue work, and he did a little activator work, and he told me that that's all that was required, and then never ever let anyone else adjust him manually. And the only reason he come in is because he found me on Google and Blue Cross, and I accepted Blue Cross. So I adjusted him yesterday, put motion in the spine, do an exam, and he sat up. His eyes were that big. He goes, will you do that every time? I said, well, Um, More than likely, depending on what I really find on your X-rays, we'll go over that tomorrow. So he comes in today and he's just freaked out because I was a little bit sore. Now I could have conformed. Well, I couldn't have conformed. A lot of other people would have conformed. They would have got their activator out. They would have said, "I tell you what, we'll use this clicker thing." And if you're using an activator, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm just being me. You be you. But I'm telling you, I will not get an activator out. And I told him, I said, listen, the reason you have the condition you have, and the reason you're in my office, because you've never been adjusted. The reason you're sore, because you've never been adjusted. If you have never worked out, you're going to be sore. You've never been adjusted appropriately. The reason you are still experiencing the problems you're having today, because it's never been corrected. If you wish to have these problems corrected, then you need to let me do it my way. If you wish to continue with these problems and let them get worse as you get older, then good luck. What would Herby said if somebody come in and said, I need you to do soft tissue work? The man went to prison for 6 months for a principle. You think he's going to put up with any bullshit like that? No. And neither will I. I'm going to read it again. Listen to me. There are those among us who live outside the mainstream of contemporary life. There are those among us who live outside the mainstream of the contemporary life. They are not eccentric, they're not rebellious, they're not maladjusted, and they're damn sure not unsuccessful. Some hidden umbilical cord attached them to characteristic new paths in which the mind and its virtues play the larger role. The word virtue, for those of you that aren't sure, means behavior showing high moral standard. What are your morals? They lead themselves with facts. They seek truth. They are tired of endless struggles of failure. Let me ask you all a question. Do you believe in the truth? Do you seek the truth? Do you seek facts in your office? Do you have virtues? Listen, you're going to suffer the pain of failure. You're going to suffer the pain of success. One way or the other, you're going to feel it. It's up to you. Gang, all I want to tell you is if you want a truly successful practice, you want a truly successful life, you want great relationships, whether you're talking to yourself, your spouse, your children, your friends, your patients, your colleagues, it doesn't matter who you're communicating with. If you will have enough virtue, enough character to always tell the truth, be honest, and when you say it, you back it up, you deliver on that truth, you will truly be successful. I want you all to try to find Herby Reaver, the book. I'm still working on trying to get it republished. I want you to get Palmer's Laws of Life, volume, I don't even know what volume it is, 1958, 36, volume 36. There is so much gold in these people, these thought thinkers, these people that, these chiropractors that they didn't think like everybody else. They didn't act like everybody else. And gang, I shared with you some very personal stories. Some people that the reason they come to see me, not because it was me, because I am a chiropractor. I have virtue. I have a certain belief, a set of rules that I live by. And in my space, when you're with me, you're safe. You're safe because I will not lie to you. And I will lay down in front of a train for you. Not only my family, not only my patients, but you that are listening to me, my Focus Foundation family. I will never lie to you. I will always bring you the truth. I will always dig inside my heart and come at you with everything I got, every single time. And what I'm asking from you is to you do it also. I've been really thinking a lot about the profession and where it's headed and what we're dealing with. B.J. Palmer was one of the reasons we have the ICA. They did that. We have organizations within this profession. We have some of you out there, Stephen Kosterman and gosh, my brain, I guess everybody's running through my head. There's many of you that are on your state boards, on national boards. Um, there's just so many of you doing amazing things. I can't even think about all of you, but I'm what I want you guys to think about is this coaching group. I share with you consultations, exams, reported findings. I share with you the adjustment. I share with you the philosophy, personal development. I share with you x-rays. I'm sharing with you tools, right? But this group is bigger. It's more. It is far exceeded a chiropractic coaching or management or consulting group. That's if you want to call it that, so be it. Man, I'm looking at the names: Blake Walters, Sean Carver, Andre, Steve Coster, Rhonda, Parker, Dr. Kim, Malachi, Sean, Brooke, Dr. Regini, Chad Carpenter. I'm looking at Nike. I'm looking at Todd. I'm looking at Samantha, Nathan, Barbaria, Paul, Heather Van Wy, Rich Chatfield, Zach, Alan, Kevin. I'm looking. We've got all. We have hundreds and hundreds of doctors worldwide. We can make a difference. We are different. We're not the norm. We're the outliers. We're the nonconformists. We're going to tell the truth. We're going to look at our colleagues and go, there's a different way. Be a chiropractor. Don't be somebody with a chiropractic degree. Be a chiropractor. That's what that means. That's what BJ says, talking the tick. And all that means is telling the truth, gang. Telling the truth. And when you step in your office in the morning, when you step in and when you speak to a patient, you speak to them with conviction. You speak to them with passion. You have the truth of chiropractic. You have the principles of chiropractic. I keep the principles here at all times. Principle number 24, the limits of adaptation. Innate intelligence adapts forces and matter for the body as long as it can do so without breaking universal law, or innate intelligence is limited by the limitations of matter. I read my chiropractic material. I hope this meant something to you tonight. It meant everything to me. This information that I shared with you, this is what I get up and I read. I have more things laying on my desk, but if I really want my life changed, I'm going to read about Herby Reaver, a real chiropractor. Herby Reaver, he married Millie. They were married until he was 90-some years old. He married her when she was 17 years old. Millie was dying of tuberculosis. Dying. She was coughing up blood every single day, and her parents were getting ready to ship her off to a sanitarium. That's where they sent people to die. Just so they had nurses take care of her because she was coughing up blood. She couldn't control her bowels. She was really, she was dying. Back then, there was no cure for tuberculosis. She just had it. She was going to die. And a friend of hers said, "Why don't you go see my chiropractor?" And she goes, "Well, what do you mean, what's a chiropractor? Just come with me." And she went and saw Herby. Said, "This is what I've got." And she said, "But the problem is, Dr. Reaver, this is when she was just a teenager. Dr. Reaver, and he was 27 years old. Dr. Reaver, the problem is I have no money and you can't tell my parents." That's fine. Because of the principles of chiropractic, because of who he was, because of his virtue, because he understood the power that he had in his hands, and he understood universal intelligence, innate intelligence on a level that we can't even wrap our minds around, he started to adjust Millie. And then one day, 2 or 3 weeks later, mother said, "Millie, something's wrong. I haven't heard you cough in a week. You're not coughing up blood and your color's back. Millie, what's going on?" And she broke and she told her, "Mom, I've been seeing this chiropractor." And Millie's mother freaked out. "Wait till your father gets home." Father come home and he told her, "You're not going to believe what your daughter's been doing." "Oh, he must be seeing that chiropractor everybody at work is seeing." Why in God's name did all these people go see this chiropractor who's a felon? Why did they go? Why did they get adjusted? Why did they give him $3 a visit when your minimum wage was probably, like 75 cents or something? Why did tuberculosis in a little girl go away? To the point to where she fell in love with the man that saved her life, and they got married, and they were married until they're in their 90s in 80s and 90s. If you will go on YouTube and put in student ICA Herbert Ross Reaver, you could listen to him and Millie on stage. It's the most beautiful interview I think I've ever seen. But with all that being said, we stand on the shoulders of giants, gang. We have a bigger mission in this planet. If you want a huge practice, that's great. Go get it. But if you want to make a difference, stick with me because we're going to make it happen. I'm not going to stop. With your help, we can make a difference bigger and faster. But if I have to come after you one at a time, so be it. I could use your help. If you choose not to, that's fine. I get it. You've got more important things to do. But I'm telling you the reason I'm in this profession and the reason I do foundations and the reason I do this tonight is because I want to make a difference for our future. There was a day when I started the foundation, or when I started the OCA, my kids were young. And our phrase is, our quote in the Oklahoma Chiropractic Association is, someone sits in the shade today because someone planted a tree years ago. And when I come up with it, when I found that, and I said, this is everything we stand for. Alicia was 23 years old. She was still, I think, in undergrad. And now she's a practicing chiropractor, raising her daughter with the principles of chiropractic. She sits in the shade today in this state because we planted a tree years ago. Your children, your grandchildren, what are they going to step into if we don't do something? And here's the thing. You can get involved with your state associations, which is great. You can get involved with the national associations, which is great. You can mentor a young chiropractor, which is great. But in my opinion, the way we're going to change the profession is we're going to create successful chiropractors that have enough patient base to make a difference in their community. Then they're going to have enough validity to be able to step out and speak to other chiropractors and go, what are you doing? I'm doing this. And then they change. And when we change lives, we change the future. You'll never know what you all mean to me. I'm here if you need me. I'm going to stay on here for about 5 to 10 more minutes. And if you have any questions, fire off right now. Dr. Allen, I appreciate you. Dr. Malachi, appreciate you. All right, gang, no questions? I'm going to give it one more minute, and then if we don't have questions, we're going to call it a night. We're going to get some rest. I want you guys to get up in the morning. If you don't have a green book, I want you to order it. If you have any chiropractic philosophy, I want you to read it. When you get up in the morning, I want you to go back and I want you to read, and I want you to pay attention to where we come from. That's Herby Reaver in prison. Would you go to prison for 6 months and leave your family at home instead of paying $25? Don't tell me that you would. I don't know that I would. I love my family. I don't want to, the thought, when I read that story, and I didn't read the whole thing. I didn't read all of it because I will tell you, I get really emotional when I read it, because the very first time I read the story of Herby's son, all I could think of was if that was my son. As I grew older and became more and more aware of how lucky I am to have good parents, what a great good luck that it is. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And as chiropractors, we all owe an enormous debt of gratitude to the chiropractic pioneers like my father, who fought for the good fight. They were the truly heroes, as they were their wives stood by their side. Thank